but I got to find it. Okay, first. I want to talk to you about what is prayer. Well, what is prayer anyway? We know that incense in the Old and the New Testament is spoken of as the prayers of the saints. So if incense is a typology that looks at as called the prayers of the saints. In Leviticus chapter 16, verse 3 and verse 12, Aaron shall enter the holy place with a bull for sin offering, a ram for a burnt offering. He shall take a fire pan full of coals of fire, upon which before the altar, before the Lord, 2 handfuls of finely ground sweet incense, and bring it inside the veil. Now, I don't have the time. I wish I did. I'll have some time tomorrow afternoon. But I want you to go, if you can, look at Numbers chapter 16, verses 46 to 48. So I just logically went before the Lord and I said, well, Lord, if incense is the prayers of the saints, then what is incense? Well, here we find an example, and in the book of Numbers, I'll just tell it to you, where about Moses and Aaron, and he takes his censer, would put it in the fire on the altar and lays incense on it, and then bring it quickly to the congregation, make atonement for them. The wrath has gone forth from the Lord, and the plague has begun. Then Aaron took it as Moses had spoken, ran into the midst of the assembly, and behold, the plague had begun among the people. So he put the incense, made atonement for the people. He took his stand between the dead and the living so that the plague was checked. So he's swinging the incense, and he draws a line of demarcation. Here's death, and here's where life begins, and that's what our prayers are supposed to do. That is the power of prayer. Prayer is the incense of the saints, and that's an Old Testament typology. Now, I'm just going to tell it to you. I've turned to the book of Exodus and other places in the Old Testament to find out the ingredients that incense is made up of. And here's what an incense is made up of: 4 ingredients. And what it says is that it's an equal proportion of each, and it has to be made every day. It can't be made up ahead of time. It's made up every day, fresh every day. Equal proportion of 4 ingredients, and it's brought together every day. Here's the 4 ingredients or qualities of incense: stacte, onycha, galbanum, and frankincense are the 4 ingredients that make up this sweet-smelling fragrance called incense that would stop a plague. So I went to do a word study to find out, well, then what is real prayer? And here's part of what I found out. Each ingredient in equal proportion, brought together, say, every day. I'm about to wind up, okay? 4 qualities. Stacte is a resinous sap that oozes forth from the bark of the type of a tree that's a day's walk journey into Syria. It was an oozing sap that came from a tree in Syria called stacte. In other words, it could be only obtained by walking into the enemy's territory. It costs the person something to get the stacte. In the same way, it costs us something if we have to go into the enemy's territory to gather the drops, because the root word here for stacte is also at times translated Word of God. So the Word of God is one of the equal proportions of what actually makes up authentic prayer. And sometimes you got to go into the enemy's camp with the Word. And so in the same way it costs us something, we have to go into the enemy territory to gather the drops, the oozing forth of the Word of God, to bubble forth into prophecy. You have to store up the Word within your heart, and then it oozes forth in the words of prophetic prayer. It's not an automatic pilot sort of thing. You have to study to show yourself approved, a workman unto God. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. So the first ingredient is called stacte. It took a day's journey to go to a tree in Syria, the enemy territory, to get the sap. I'm a good sap. Okay, moving on. Onycha. What's onycha? Onycha comes from the Mediterranean Sea, and it's from a mussel or mollusk shell. And they would again have to walk there, go there to get the shells from the sea, and then they would do something with it. And then this was used a lot in perfumes. I'm gonna close here real soon, guys, okay? We have a big day tomorrow. It had to be ground into a fine powder and further treated in order to give the incense the sweet odor when it was burned. A mollusk shell, ground down, brokenness. Brokenness. The oozing forth of the Word of God cost us something. And prayer is also made up of an equal amount of ingredient called onycha. It's a shell that's broken down into a fine powder. And when fire hits it, it releases a sweet smell to the incense. It's an equal ingredients. So there's an equal ingredients of spiritual warfare, the Word of God going into the enemy's camp, costing us something. An equal ingredients of true prayer. True prayer has an equal, okay. Anybody here have felt like they've been ground down to a fine powder? Anybody ever been broken? That's a quality of prayer. Because you're not praying your will be done, you're praying His. And I tell you, a broken and a contrite heart, God does not despise. I'd like for the keyboard player to come because I'm seriously going to start to drive my truck.